a look at something
Yeah,
that he
I
does?
would say that whether it was the first or the second, or maybe if John said he did millions of things, the books cannot contain them, but I'm going to pick out some and show you for a specific purpose, and he goes and counts
Right.
those one through whatever. These signs have been given for proof. To me, that was even if that was as Bart presented to be a problem with the numbering. That was this kind of an insignificant problem. Can you give me an example of a more significant contradiction that would be like fatal to the gospel accounts or something, if it really truly was?
Well, so I think we need to just back up a step and ask ourselves, what do we mean when we say a fatal contradiction? So there is, for example, a certain view of inspiration according to which the Gospels are inerrant in all that they affirm, and if there were a contradiction between two of the narratives there, that would really damage and destroy that particular doctrine of inspiration. And yet the accounts might still be historically reliable from the standpoint of the way that we would treat Herodotus or Thucydides or Josephus or Tacitus.
Mm-hmm. Discussions, I've not been able to listen to the podcast. Would you get any discussions into some of the unintended confirmation that you have between the gospel accounts that you've spoken on several occasions?
Coincidences, the internal interconnections, we did, and Bart's response was basically, never heard of them. And then he had to find something to say. So he said, this sounds like 19th century apologetics. Well, yes, it is, and none the worse for that. So the fact that he doesn't happen to have encountered it before doesn't, in my book, count against it. What it is an indictment of seminary education in the United States, that somebody could have a fine education, as Bart undoubtedly did, and not even encounter this, not even have heard of it. But it did get forgotten in the early 20th century, and even as fine a scholar as F.F. Bruce had to rediscover it almost by accident many years after he had completed his training and was a well-respected scholar. But, Bart talks a lot about reading the Gospels horizontally rather than vertically, about cross-connecting passages. And the undesigned coincidences are all about reading the Gospels horizontally. And yet he pays them no attention whatsoever and gives every appearance of never having heard of them before. So I would like to encourage him to take his own advice and read the Gospels horizontally more.
Could you give us one quick example of an unintended coincidence?
Sure, an undesigned coincidence. Take Matthew chapter 14, for example, tells us the story of the death of John the Baptist. In the setup to the story, Herod Antipas hears that Jesus is baptizing, and he turns to his servants and he says, well, what is this? Is he back from the dead? What's going on? Now, I'm interested in three words there. They're the words, to his servants. And although the story of John the Baptist's death is told in Mark, those three words are not in Mark. That's only in Matthew. Unique material. So here's the question. Matthew used to be a tax collector. Now he's a traveling preacher. How does he know what Herod Antipas is saying to his servants in the privacy of his own house? Well, if it's all just a made-up book, you would say, omniscient narrator, adding some details, making the story a little more interesting or vivid. Now, if you want to maintain that Matthew is telling us things more or less as they happened, then all you may be able to say in reply to that would be, well, we don't know. And that's fair. There are a lot of questions we can ask about ancient documents where we'd like the answer, and we don't know what it is. So that's okay. Maybe we just don't know. But in this case, we can do better. So in Luke 8:3, we read about Joanna. She was one of these women who ministers to Jesus, and Joanna, we're told in a little parenthetical remark, is the wife of Chuza. Okay, who's Chuza? Well, Luke continues. Chuza is Herod's steward, Herod's household manager. And now it's not a mystery how Matthew could have known what Herod was saying to his servants. Jesus' followers had family in the highest ranks of Herod's servants. So that little interconnection where a detail just dropped in passing in Luke explains some natural question that we had when we were reading Matthew. That's the kind of interlocking we have among the Gospels. And the funny thing about this is that these interlockings go in all directions. They crisscross the Gospels. The Synoptic Gospels explain things in John. John explains things in the Synoptic Gospels. The Synoptic Gospels explain things in one another. And all of it in ways that are not just like sources that tell the same story in the same words. Very indirect. That kind of confirmation is incredibly hard to fake, especially if you're taking documents written by different people at different times and they explain things in one another.
Yes,
That's
it
the
doesn't.
kind of interconnection we have there.
Unintended in the sense it has none of the earmarks of something that was purposely placed there later by a scribe in order to fix something.
Exactly. We know what ham-handed explanation looks like. We have plenty of instances of forgeries where things were written at a time later than they purport to be, and then they try to make it look like they were written at that time, and it's just a botch. Even, you come forward and you read some of the novels of Sir Walter Scott, and he tries to set things in Scotland, and he gets things wrong, even though he's living in an information-rich age, whereas here, we're not dealing with a place where you could go down to a local library. It's not like they had vast reference libraries where you could look up details like this in those days. So it's a world without Google, right? You can't check your details that way.
Well,
I sometimes call this error the Wikipedia fallacy, the idea of thinking that the gospel authors got these things right because they could just go sort of look them up real quick.
yes. Well, listen, Tom, I really appreciate you taking time to share some insights, and we will also recommend that 2-part podcast in your discussion with Bart Ehrman on Unbelievable with Justin Brierley. Do you have any words of advice or encouragement for our club before we break? Again, we have about half and half atheists and Christians. We gather together. It's friendly but intense. Any encouragement for us?
Yeah, I guess I would say what C.S. Lewis said in his autobiography. It's not only Christians who have to be careful what they read. It's also atheists. A young atheist cannot guard his reading too carefully. Dangers lurk on every side. And if you should happen to go over some of the same ground that Bart has been over, but with a plowshare set a bit deeper, you might turn up some things you didn't expect.
Wow.
And that would be all to the good.
Thanks so much, Tim. Appreciate your time. God bless you.
Thanks, James. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Just out of curiosity, is there like a scholarly term for these unintended coincidences that he's talking about? Is that
They're just called undesigned.
I kept saying it wrong.
Versed in this as he is, and they said, who's busiest, who has time to write the book on unintended
The book's out.
coincidences?
If you
And
want
it's
to get
by
the book.
Lydia
Yeah.
McGrew.
Lydia, the book is out, and we thought about that book,
That's-
and because you were here to address it. But I'm just saying, I don't know, and we haven't even really resolved what the next book is going to be for next month. And so I'm going to try to have something to you guys on Monday, but we're still talking it out. And we're both open to suggestions as well. The Christian book next month, but
So Courtney, Miss Mythicist, does that help you with Jesus, at least in history and as a real person?
Well, just so much of it is over my head of what I've looked into on this subject, so I have no idea.
Really?
No, I have no idea. And the only reason that I say I'm a mythicist with a caveat is that so far from what I've learned, it makes sense on that side, but I haven't looked into too many other perspectives yet, so I do plan on that, and so I never say that I'm definitely that. It's just that so far from what I know, logically, that's what makes the most sense to me.
this is what I like about our club.
Right.
Is some of the things you guys have raised have rocked my world a little bit, to be honest with you, and it makes me like a slap in the face going, well, why didn't I even think of that question, okay? And makes me, get the library and look into things and stuff like that. It's helpful for me to have this kind of thing. And this is one of the things that I look forward to be challenged. And I've shared this with others. I think if you come here, you're going to hear some of the best questions and of why there may not be a God, or that Jesus isn't true, or something like that. So rather than hiding from those things or ignoring those things, we can only win by looking at them. And some of it, the jury's still out for me. I just have to put it on the shelf, and I'm going to come back to that later. But that's not a wrong answer. A wrong answer would be say, I'm right because I know I'm right, and I've always been right my whole life. That's the wrong thing for me to do.
Well, and see, here's what's difficult to get is like, remember when the curtain temple was torn in two? Well, Luke has it torn, is it before Jesus died? I think before he died, or after he died, who knows? That when the temple's torn in two, it means that now you don't need to have sacrifices in the temple, because Jesus is now the ultimate sacrifice for sin, and you can go directly into the temple to meet God. You don't have to go through the Jewish sacrifice. Now Mark has it torn after he died. So one has before he died and one has after. So the thing is, the temple, the current temple.
I will say neither of the authors were in the Holy of Holies.
Because the temple curtain was probably never torn at all. They just,
But neither
both
were
authors
you.
made it. Both authors probably made it up. And that's what being propagandized from such an early age in this Christian culture. We just, the Bible's true, the Bible's true. And you've got to go and rearrange your mind and say, oh, well, that wasn't historical, but don't go completely mythicist, because all John Dominic Crossan says, if there's anything certain historically, it was Jesus died on the cross. He was crucified. The reason being, you would never have your Messiah, we agree on this, to have this ignominious death.
Criteria of embarrassment. If you make the story up, you never make it up that way.
No.
But
And nobody was expecting the Messiah to be.
Why wouldn't your position be, we don't have any way to know whether or not the...
Exactly, that is the.
No, but your position is, obviously it was made up.
Everybody knows it was.
That's what I'm saying.
And how would
No,
you know
that's
that?
kind of how Bill
We have
talks.
no say.
We don't own Bill. I love you, Bill.
This is the official position of the
I'm not saying you.
She said that's just how Bill talks. We don't own Bill.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks,
Bill, I love you, but you are rather assertive, and I don't know,
Okay,
sometimes.
it's very, no secular historians even remark about the temple curtain being torn, and it was a big, thick curtain.
How
There were very
many,
few references to Jesus
first
in the
century
Greek
Jewish
system.
historians refuted it?
It's the absence of evidence claim once again.
You know, this
That's
is
good.
this is the first time I've kind of stepped out of the Christian realm and jumped into a.
You mean the bubble, the Christian propaganda
Yeah.
bubble?
And the first time I've read I listened to the audiobook of something of a different view, and it was it was scary at first. I even asked my wife to pray for me. Like, hey man.
Did you really?
I say, you're gonna pray if I'm acting weird or something like that.
You got a demon activity.
That lends credibility to anything he says from here on out.
But what did it feel like? I mean, this is first exposure.
Yeah, my exposure is when he posed all these contradictions. Really, I just felt like, why are these contradictions? Why in this gospel the curtains read before, and why in the other gospels ripped after? It wasn't that, hey, there's a contradiction, therefore this is not true at all. It was just why is it this is the case? Why was it written down like this? And so that was kind of like my feeling as I went through it. And there were some challenges. I was definitely challenged. And the other thing was, the question why kind of led to me, I want to look this up, and I want to study this, see if is this true. And it led to me wanting to learn more about the situation. Right. And then it led to frustration because I can't learn about every single thing that was in there.
But anything that you do out of that puts you way ahead of most Christians.
Right.
And maybe atheists too. I don't know. I can't speak for atheists.
Absolutely.
But I'm just saying, that's the win that we're looking for. Whether you're atheist or Christian, if you come out of here going, I need to dig deeper, I need to look at this, I need to not trust what my leaders have told me uncritically, which we all do. Right? Of course, people we admire and respect.
Well, one thing to keep in mind is, whether Ehrman's right or not, there are many, many Christian scholars as educated as Ehrman that don't agree with him. I mean, there are just as many, Christians that know everything he knows and don't have his position. So Doesn't mean it doesn't have value, but it's easy just to listen to his book and never have listened to anything else and just be overwhelmed by it. But
Yeah.
you could find plenty of Christians that would.
And he is peer
No,
reviewed,
he's-
by the way.
Well, and
That was my
like
question,
his
yeah.
mentor was Bruce
Yeah,
Metzger,
Tim McGrew peer
who
reviewed.
was a
Yeah.
Christian. He's deceased now. Who was a Christian, who was probably the leading New Testament scholar or the textual critic of the 20th century. And so you work through it like that, and you see, wait, hold on, there's another side to the story by someone who is just as smart, maybe smarter, in terms of Greek at least.
Yeah, I know that,
But
but
it was a great experience. It was
Oh, great.
really
Good.
fun.
Did anybody else do it for the first time? And
oh yeah, what do you think? Did you read the book?
Yes, I did.
And what? How'd you come out?
I'm kind of in the same boat as you. It was challenging at first, but I think a lot of I'm going to the same college as these three, and a lot of the education I'm getting there helped answer some of the questions that I had about this book. And that's not to say that I don't have questions, because I still definitely do, but I'm just here to learn. So.
Well, here's the problem. See, questions are an anathema to the church, and there's in his thing in your
God.
the whole church?
No, I
Kill me,
mean,
Bill.
No, just the last 3 pews.
in his seminary where he's going this week, New Orleans Seminary, they had this is the Christians. I overheard the Christians on a video say that these gatekeepers are, and you heard it with, are intent on keeping apologetics out of the church. And you know, when you interviewed Zach, what did Zach say? That for 2 years, this is the big atheist here in town, and he went for 2 years to this church, and he got a new pastor. He goes, I hate apologetics. I hate questions. This thing is over.
Some do exist,
Let me
yes.
say this to balance that off a little bit. I think there's some truth to that there was a period of time, maybe my generation, that apologetics was disdained. I would hear the statement all the time, every church needs one apologist, but only one. Two, you have a church split.
That's good.
So,
One will be tolerated.
exactly, and apologists earned a reputation. Sometimes they earned it rightfully so, of being, splitting hairs and being nobody's right but me and argumentative and stuff like that. And that was a valid criticism of some apologists. But that was 20 years ago. This is the golden age of apologetics for evangelical Christianity. Every conservative seminary, Southwestern, over in Fort Worth, they're having the apologetics conference there. New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, where I teach. They don't just have degrees. They don't just have courses. They have PhD level degrees in apologetics. Biola, Southern Evangelical Seminary. It is almost like target rich. Go wherever you want to, and it is the number one thing. My generation, the idea was more, people don't care about this right or wrong. It's all about how it makes you feel. It's an affective approach, just going to make people feel good and give them solutions like how to raise their kids and stuff like that. Yeah. And the millennials came along and goes, those answers are no answers at all. And I need something that's real and that can answer the question my Muslim friends asking me. And so the response, and we're late, but the response has been overwhelming. And this is a time that's never, in my lifetime, there's never been a higher interest in evangelical Christianity and apologetics than today, right now. And I think it's good, and it does help us think better, I think.
Houston Baptist is another phenomenal beacon of light. Holly Ordway was as liberal and atheistic a professor as the University of Massachusetts ever had on their campus. And she's at Houston Baptist University now. Lee Strobel is there, and the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah, and her story was written up in, was it Time Magazine or something? I can't remember.
I think she called herself the most unlikely convert. Mm-hmm. It's quite a story.
Yeah, what's happening in Houston? They have a thing called the Oasis in Houston by Mike Else, who used to be a Methodist minister who became an atheist. And he just blows the lid off Christianity. You can look at his YouTube videos. It's the
That's
Oasis.
quite an assertion, Bill.
Well, what gets me is, why did you tell everybody this when you were a minister? You know that P&J wrote, the Old Testament. You know how problematic this is, and you never told them until you came out as an atheist. Then you spilled the beans on it.
Can I say one thing? Please don't knock that TV on your head, Bill.
I really don't.
Yeah, it's starting to wobble, guys.
I appreciate
Take you both out.
Yeah, four things. Two are organic to this. And I get some housekeeping. I know we're kind of. It feels like we're getting towards the end, so I'll just get my last. Yeah. All right. So with this, the rise in the golden age of apologetics you're talking, I think the cause and effect there, we have to consider the fact that the growing secularity in the country, and the internet is where religions go to die. And I think it's not so much a golden age; it might be a last gasp.
Okay.
But
I will say this: I'll give the atheists and the Muslims their due. Maybe if there's not really good questions being asked, we don't bother with it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
these are
Yeah.
good questions.
Like
Okay.
people like Bart Ehrman are helping us with this.
Helping us do what we should have done.
That's true.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that's
Second thing, I think it's called the omniscient narrative, like parts of the Bible that are written from somebody who just couldn't have been there, and you might have been able to explain a couple. And I'm not defending; those are great. I want to dig into that. What's her name? Joanna, and the servant, and Herod. That sounds really interesting. I'm gonna dig into that. I made some notes, but there's some just off the top of my head. It'd be really harder to claim an omniscient narrative or to claim an excuse for it, and that's Gethsemane and Jesus and Satan.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Jesus tempted in the wilderness, which they get mixed up anyway.
Yeah, the wilderness, and when Satan took him around to the mountain and showed him everything. Those are two examples there. No one else was around.
Yeah, Jesus would have had to tell somebody.
So it doesn't explain them all, is what I'm saying. Okay, some housekeeping. 3 housekeepings. And I won't talk again, sorry. My vote for the book for next month is James's book on The Secret. Here's why. We know we'll get an interview. He'll never want to, we'll know we'll have an interview from the expert. And it'll be something, it'll be fun. It won't be as controversial, won't be as antagonistic, because we'll all be able to shit on it. The Secret. No, we'll all be in agreement on The Secret. I don't think anyone in here believes that there's any truth to The Secret.
Bill, did you just say?
Could you
vote
for the month?
What The Secret is Oprah was pushing this thing 10 years ago, and written by a New Ager. That basically is the secret of how Oprah's made her fame and fortune, and it's basically New Age.
It's a religion now.
It's
the
a
law
religion.
of
It's a whole
attraction.
religion about it.
Absolutely.
And basically,
And no one
thoughts
here
become things. Whatever you think
believes in
becomes
it.
reality. You can visualize world peace and this kind of thing. And it was so popular, our publisher asked if I would co-author a book to kind of refute. I found some interesting things. Now, I don't want to do it for a couple of things. Well, the only thing that's appealing to me is I wouldn't have to read the book. That's but it's like I don't know that it
doesn't count as a Christian book.
Yes, it doesn't extend our conversation.
If we
now,
agree,
if we had some New Agers here. Yeah, let's do the book.
I think we would have a lot to say. And remember, everything we say goes on my show anyway, so it's going to get a wider view than just us 20 people. That also, and what if we agreed to do a Christian book in March? Because this doesn't technically count as a Christian book. So you wouldn't lose your spot. We would just we'd pick up a Christian book in March and just make this like an interim book. All right, that's my vote. It doesn't have to go that way, but that's what I was thinking.
I would love to read one of my heroes I actually met. It was like Malcolm X when he met, Elijah Muhammad. And he just was stunned. So, what's his name? John Shelby Sloan was talking over here at TCU. At the chapel over there, and I asked him a question about Richard Carey's book. I said he just wrote a 700-page book saying Jesus didn't exist, and he said, well, he could have made it 200. And he goes, all you have to do is look at Galatians 1:18, where he goes down, meets with the pillars. That seals it for me. But John Shelby Spong has a unique ability to take complex, nuance like these things, theological issues, and make them terribly easy to understand. And his books are real short. Like, what are some of his books that we were talking about?
The Sins of Scripture, for one.
Mm-hmm. Really, and I think we can count him as a Christian author because he's a legitimate bishop.
I'm not going to put him there.
He's a bishop of the church. Now I got to be
I'll put
honest.
Sue there, but not him.
Bishop of the Episcopal Church. So he doesn't. He goes, I don't really believe in the birth narratives; they're fiction, and the miracles probably didn't happen. And obviously, you know, the resurrection appearances are all myth, but I still believe. You know?
That's still a
I did a radio
Yeah.
interview with,
Church has come a long way since I was gonna.
Oh, really? It is.
We should-
Well, he's not only he's a bishop. He's not just
Wow.
a. But I don't know
I
that.
did a radio.
month. Read that for the atheist month. I don't
No,
really.
that's a great. He's a
Let me
Christian.
say,
Yeah,
I
he's
did
a
a
believer.
radio
Oh, you did an interview
program
with
with
him.
it.
Yeah.
And this was in Radio Paradise or something down in the Caribbean. I can't remember where. But it was Easter calling. We were both calling in. It's Easter, and it was about, did Jesus rise from the dead? He was adamantly, absolutely, it was heaven and hell. It was a question of heaven and hell. He was adamantly positive there was no hell, and doubtful if there was a heaven. I don't know that we could put this as a Christian book. It's not Christian in any kind of
We
tradition.
can still read it.
We could read it as
Right.
like an in
And it's
between
easy,
on its
yeah.
own week.
That could be our in between.
But
Yeah.
But
That'd
I,
be interesting.
I had a skeptic. I remember I said, well, John, don't you think, you know, the cleansing of the temple is historical because it probably did lead to his arrest? It's multiply attested in the Gospels and all. And he goes, I don't believe that. I just was taken from Zechariah where my house will not be a trader's thing or whatever. I go, this guy didn't believe anything, you know, but he still calls himself a Christian. You know?
Can I throw a book idea out?
Sure.
I'm sorry, you were going to go. Well, my experience has been most atheists that I know, and I'm not talking about here, but outside in the world, their number one problem is the problem of pain. That's seriously their number one roadblock. And I was suggesting, why don't we do the
Erman did a book on the problem of evil. God's problem was another.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not kind of a variation.
Yeah, so what if we did C.S. Lewis' Problem of Pain or some similar work like
What do you want to
Or an
suggest?
atheist book
Do you
on
want
it.
to suggest three?
Well, I was thinking for the next
Okay,
Christian book.
Do something unique.
Bill and I, based on your approval, will go in the inner chambers and we won't come out to a white smoke.
Smite smoke. Yes.
And we will
That's how
pick a
we'll know.
book. But does anybody say, I don't want to do something on the secret, I want to do something Christian or atheist,
Listen,
I don't want to get off
You
topic.
don't hold them to this. Don't hold their feet to the fire right now. Everyone get on the Friends of the Atheist Christian Book Club. You guys create a poll on there,
Okay.
and we vote on there.
Okay, we'll do that.
Is this
But
a
the other thing
democracy?
that we'll do is,
Right?
either way,
You sound right?
you get the book for free. Either way,
Regulated.
It's very
It is. It really is. It's very terribly inefficient in China.
Our vote
vote
or
Who's it?
electoral college?
either way,
good.
Dictator, you hate democracy.
No, like in China, when they want to do a commerce center, they just shove it through. They don't have to go through
are those
lobbyists.
books
And
still in your office?
Why, they're number one in
The
what-
Truth Behind the Secret.
The truth.
Plus, they only get one day,
Go
and
check.
that's all.
Wait,
Either way,
Oh, wait.
whether we do it or not, if you want the book, you get a free copy. Because we got some in there. So the book's out of print, so that's all there is.
What book is that?
Well, I'd love to
The
read
Truth
book. It
Behind the
seems like
Secret.
off
Okay,
topic
so
on the
so
street.
this is a book that you wrote in response to it, or it's the secret that we'd be
Yes.
reading?
No, we would read the Truth Behind the Secret.
Okay.
There's
But
a-
it
there's
gives
enough
all
factual-
the major
yeah.
points. I'll give you one that I think is an interesting topic. Has quantum physics proven that thoughts become things?
Jesus.
That's basically the secret right there,
That is
in a nutshell.
so
And there's no evidence.
You think it can be. If you think it can happen. That's basically the secret.
And it
But there's
gets-
way more
gets
to it
into
than
the
that. But yeah.
arguments of entangled
It didn't work
particles
out?
and
I know, same here.
Okay, let me get through my last two housekeepings. I've got Chris on the show on the 13th, and it's not going to be live. Yeah.
Chris!
Hey,
Oh.
are you going to post a notice on Atheist Christian Book Club?
I don't usually, but I guess I can start
Please,
doing
so
that.
that we all
Anything.
will be notified when it actually
And
airs.
Justin Brierley, I got another one coming out probably like in 2 days. Another like part 3 of 4.
Okay.
So I can post those as notifications too
Okay.
to let everyone know. And the last thing is, don't walk out of here until we get a group photo because
Thank
sometimes
you,
we
I forgot
forget.
already.
Okay, yeah. That's it.
When's the interview?
Thank
13th.
you, everybody.
An unholy thing. An unholy thing.